Alright, today I've got Quartermaster General out, which is a pretty cool World War II game that is sort of like Axis and Allies, but doesn't have all of the pieces and all the stuff that you have to put out on the board for that game. Instead, you get these really cool decks of cards that represent your country. And one of the interesting things about this is that the decks really represent the economic power of the country, from everything to how many cards you get. If you can see on the table here, Germany has a pretty big deck. The United States, way over here in the corner, has a pretty big deck. But Italy, for example, has a smaller deck. I think Italy has the smallest deck in the game. It's pretty thin compared to, let's see, here's the United States deck. It's pretty thin comparatively. And it represents the economic and military power of the nation, rather than all the pieces up on the board. So a lot of what's done in this game is done through the deck. A lot of the cards are unique in the decks, and the amount of certain cards that are common vary from deck to deck. Also, what is representative of the different militaries is you got these tokens here, but not everybody gets the same amount of tokens either. You can see that the Soviet Union here has not much sea power here, represented by these boats. They have one boat. They have a lot of tanks. And Italy has, I think they might have the fewest tokens of everybody. They've got a few tanks and 3 boats, so they're kind of balanced. So you have to stay within the decks, and the pieces represent your military power and how your faction plays. But anyways, I think I'll zoom in more on the board here if I can. Of course, it's going to be difficult to see even with the zoom. You got a map of the world here, and each country starts with a tank on their sort of their home base, their home area. And the game is about logistics, and it's not just logistics. There is fighting and other ways to attack players, but mostly it's logistics. So when you build out a unit and you need a card to build it out, you have to build it so that it is attached by supply in a line to one of these stars. So for example, if I built here, this tank is nearby this star, which has a tank on it, so therefore you've got supply out to that tank. Then I could build over here in Russia, and I'm still supplied. But if my supply line gets broken, at the end of my turn, there's a phase where you check to see what units are in supply, and if a unit's not in supply, you lose it. So you have to keep your units in supply, or you will lose them as the game goes on. I think the best way to kind of get into this game is just to kind of show you maybe how it plays with a couple of turns here. So the game starts out right away is you've got your deck, and you deal yourself 10 cards, and then you have to discard 3 cards. And Germany gets to go first, and the decks are laid out in order of play here. And I had to discard 3 cards right off the bat, and I chose to discard the sea battle and V weapons and submarines. These economic warfare cards, basically what these do is they attack the deck of your enemies, and the advantage to attacking the deck of your enemies is you go through your deck one time max. When your deck is gone, you don't draw any more cards, and you just have to go with whatever you have left over in your hand, and if you run out of cards completely, you're pretty much out of the game. So the economic warfare cards attack other decks, and it was sad to see these go, but it was sad to see the sea battle go too. But I had to make a tough choice, so I kept these cards. And you can see from the start here, I've kept a couple of status cards. I wanted to definitely keep my build cards, and I've got a land battle. So to build units, you need build army cards. To fight, you need either land battle or sea battle. If the battle happens on land, you need a land battle. If the battle happens on sea, you need a sea battle. Status cards are cards that you play out in front of you that stay in front of you for the entire game, and event cards are sort of one-time events that play, and you get that immediately, but then the card's discarded for good. So the event card I have is Military Dictatorship in the Balkans, recruit an Italian army in the Balkans, and eliminate an allied army in Ukraine. So I want to hold on to this card until maybe the Soviets come into the Balkans, then I'll be able to eliminate them. So I'll probably hold on to that for a while. I'm probably going to play a build army because I want to take Western Europe right away. So I'm just going to go ahead and build army. So I'm going to discard that card. I'm going to build an army in Western Europe. And it's hard to see from the angle and not being zoomed in very much, but there is a star in Western Europe. Now that's it. That's the end of my turn. You play one card, that is it. You do whatever action is on it, and that's it. And then you score points. You get 2 points for every star that you have, as long as you're in the space by itself. I have 2 stars, Germany and Western Europe. I'm going to score 4 points for the Axis. And it is a team game, so the points are scored for my entire team. Then I draw back my card, and I've got an event, production initiative, search your deck for a status card and play it, then shuffle and draw your deck. Oh, this is a good card. That's going to allow me to go into my deck and probably take Blitzkrieg, which is a card in there which is quite good for Germany. There's a couple good cards in there I might want, but Blitzkrieg is usually a pretty good choice. So now I got Great Britain. With Great Britain I've got some build navies and build armies, so I can go and put some pressure on Western Europe right away if I wanted to. But I've also got recruit an army in Southeast Asia and a navy in the South China Sea. That doesn't do me any good here because I need to get some supply over there before that's going to help me. I've got eliminate an Axis army in China. I like holding on to this card in case the Japanese get a foothold in China. I can knock them out. Here's another card that eliminates an Axis army in the Balkans and recruits an army in the Balkans. And then of course I got my build army and navy. So I think probably the best move right now is just to build a navy. I'm going to build a navy next to the United Kingdom here, and that turn is done. I'll draw a card, and I got General Smuts strengthens ties with the UK. Recruit an army in Africa and a navy in the Southern Ocean or the Indian Ocean. Southern Ocean's way down here. Or the Indian Ocean. I don't know. We'll see if that comes into play later. Alright, going over to next. Oh, I gotta score my points. UK has 2. All they control is the United Kingdom. So now, Japan. I got a card, all these cards that I held on to. I've got some build, navy, and army cards. The Japanese deck has a lot of response cards that go. Response cards, you play them, but you play them face down. And they stay face down until they are triggered by whatever event is on there. For example, Banzai Charge. Use when you battle a land space. Battle an additional army in the same or an adjacent space. So what you do is you play that down, and so when you do battle an army in a space, you can flip that over and also play the response. I think I'm going to play the safe bet, play a build Navy right away, and draw a card up. Kwantung Army. Use any time, choose a supply Japanese army in China, Sichuan, or Vladivostok. Do not remove this army this turn. This is good. I would want to play this response card before I go to the China mainland. So then when I place an army in China, which I think is what I'm going to aim to because I do have a build army card, I won't be able to have it removed. That's good. I did draw my card, yeah. Alright. Over to... I built Navy and I never put it out. Of course, I'm going to put it in the Sea of Japan here. And I got to score my points. That's one thing about this game. I'm constantly forgetting to score the points. You have to remember that at the end of your turn, you go up the points. It's just, you're so involved with the cards, it's very easy to forget to go up there. So Soviets, they've got a lot of, they end up usually having a lot of response cards too. And I've got this really good one right here. Women conscripts. Used when playing a build army card, you may place that build army card on top of your draw deck instead of discarding it. So that allows me to keep getting access to the build army card over and over and over again. Sort of like the human wave of people that the Russians threw at the German soldiers. And one thing that I like about the game is the decks really do have the feel of, they play sort of like the feel of the nation that they're sort of designed after. But, let's see, I have one build army card. I would really like to build an army on Ukraine, but I only have one build army card and I don't know. See, the thing is, I'm not going to know when I build up when I can get another card for a build army. So if I put that out, that's going to make this conscripts obsolete for a while until I draw another build army. So I'm going to play that as a status card, and it goes down in front of me so everybody can see it and they know that I'm going to be able to do that. I'll draw up another card, and I did draw a build army. Alright, I'm going to go over to Italy now. One of the things about this game is if you're going to play it well, you really do need to understand what's in all of the other decks so that you know what to expect. And let's see here. What do we have for Italy? When a supply German army is removed, immediately recruit an Italian army in that space. A lot of these Italian cards support the German army. And a lot of them have to do with North Africa, and a lot of them have special points having to do with getting Africa and the Middle East and such. So we got Africa Corps, recruit an available German army in North Africa, and recruit an available German navy in the Mediterranean. That's pretty good. As long as we can keep the supply line active, but that depends. That's going to depend a lot on Western Europe. Do I want to play that now? An Italian army in North Africa and an Italian navy in the Bay of Bengal. That's a really good card. All I really need is to get a, if I could get a ship on the Mediterranean Sea, and I could get a tank onto North Africa, and then I could be supplied in the Bay of Bengal, and then I would have a direct route to India, which would be great. Do I have a build navy? I do not have a build navy, though. I would love to get a navy there. This gives me a point for each victory for each navy on the board. That's going to be good to get out later. During victory, start return game +1 for each of the North each of North Africa, Africa, and the Middle East occupied by an Italian or German army. See, they get a lot of points for that region. Build army. See, I'm not sure what I want to do here. I want to get a navy in the Mediterranean so we can start getting some of those cards out. I might build an army in Western Europe to bolster that spot up, and then play the card that gets Germany some supply into Africa. I'm not sure though. If I could only get a unit in the Mediterranean, that I would be golden. Alright, I'm just going to hold off. I'm going to play one of these status cards and maybe hope to draw something. The other thing in the game is if you don't like what's in your hand, you can discard a number of cards and then draw. The problem with that is your deck is fixed. And it's especially a problem for Italy because Italy has the smallest deck. So you don't want to discard very much in Italy's deck. You just want to, you know, kind of hope you get your draws. So I'm going to get this this one here. The status is going to give me some points for both Italy and Germany when they occupy these areas, because I have that card that's going to get Germany in there. So I'm going to play that out as a status, draw up, and I got a sea battle. It's not going to do any good right now. Alright, so Italy scores 2. And I should have scored 2 for Moscow. See, I'm already messing up the points because already UK had 2 points and the Soviet Union has 2 points. Alright, going over to the United States here. We've got some battles here. We've got aircraft carriers. We got this deploy Pearl Harbor. First thing I know I want to do is looks like I got a lot of cards that's going to set me up to do work in the Pacific, so I'm going to build an army. I'm going to build an army over here in Western United States. It's going to get me that star. It's going to get me 4 points. And it's setting me up to build, logistically now have a presence in the Pacific side here where I can build up, draw a card. Arsenal of Democracy. The United Kingdom may immediately build an army and a navy. The units may be built in the order of the United Kingdom's player of choice. That's going to be really good. An army and a navy. Wow, that's going to be that would be a good boost for the UK. And I'll just kind of play around and go to the next next round here. So end of the round, I'm going to go up 1 on the round track. The rounds go up to 20. I haven't played a game yet that's gone that far, to 20 turns, so there's more than likely the games are going to end before that, but that's the ultimate timer on the game. So going back to Germany. Whoa, I already had Blitzkrieg in my hand. By the way, I was thinking about playing that status card to get me a card from the deck, but I already have Blitzkrieg. Now, the only thing I worry about is with Germany, I know England has got a card somewhere in their deck called the Enigma, for the Enigma decoding device there. And that allows them to get rid of one of my status cards. And the most important status cards I have, one of which is Blitzkrieg. And but it's a great card that you want to get out early, but it's also a card that's going to be a target of that British card in the future, probably. Let's see. And there's another very good card in the deck that I could search out. I don't need to do that right now, though. And no one bothered me in Western Europe. I could begin an advance towards the Ukraine, which would be nice. This allows me to draw, playing a card, discard the top 2 cards of my draw deck to play a build army from the discard pile. That can come in handy. Let's play Blitzkrieg and get that out, I think. It's time to get Blitzkrieg out. Draw a card. We got, oh, this is the other good card that I was looking for. Bias for action. Use once per turn. When you build an army, discard the top card of your draw deck to battle an allied army adjacent to the army just built. So the rules that you still have to battle the army, you have to, you know, have something there. You know, you can't just, you have to have an army next to the place that you're battling, but that allows you to battle in an extra space, which is great. Alright, let's grab, we didn't score Germany, yeah, 4 points. I'm sure I'm messing that up. Trying to film and explain and keep track of that, it's even harder. Alright, UK. We see that Blitzkrieg out, we want to get rid of that, but we don't have the Enigma card. Nobody's gone in the Balkans yet. This does not do me any good yet, so I don't have anything in... No one's in China yet. Put an army in Africa and a navy in the Southern Ocean. Now if I build a navy in the South Atlantic, I could build an army in Africa and then I can get another boat in the Southern Ocean, though Southern Ocean's like getting way out there. I guess that would allow me to go towards the Indian Ocean and then to Australia. It would give me a path over there to get to those logistical points over there. But I'm not going to be fighting anybody in Western Europe. I don't have any attacks. I can build a navy. I can build an army. I could build an army in Scandinavia, though I don't really want to be up that way. I could go into the Mediterranean Sea, and that would wreak a little bit of havoc. These channels here, if there is no unit on North Africa, it's sort of by default controlled by the Allied forces. So these are controlled by the Allied forces, unless the Axis forces get themselves into the country that controls it, and then they would control the strait or the canal that's there. So in this case, I think that would, building a navy in there would really mess with Germany and Italy, because I know they like to get into the Mediterranean. But if I build in the South Atlantic, then I could play that card that helps me get boats out, and I could head towards, well, let's do that. Let's build in the South Atlantic. Let's do that. And then we'll play that card that gets me into Africa and the Southern Ocean. And we'll see if we can spread out that way. We'll see how that goes. Increase Commonwealth support. Recruit a United Kingdom army in India, Australia, or Canada. This is great. This is going to allow me to get into India. That's awesome. That's kind of a game-changing type of a card here. So with Japan, I know I wanted to play that one that got me into, that protects me if I have an army in China. So I'm going to play this status card. These are played face down. And that's all you do for that. Now, I already forgot, again, to give the United Kingdom 2 points. Now Japan has gone. And Japan's going to get 2 points as well. Let's go over to the Soviets. Now, it's kind of a boring game because I haven't really built out any units yet, which I usually do. But now I have this women conscripts, so I am definitely going to build an army the human wave of attacks is coming into the Ukraine here, and Moscow's going to score 4 points. Going to score 4 points for Moscow and the Ukraine. Draw back on the card. What do we got? Land battle. That's going to be good. Over to Italy. All right. We've got that sea battle card. All right. Let's do this. We're going to build an army in... Even though I don't want to waste my armies too much over in this part of the area, I'm going to build an army in Western Europe. That is going to allow me to harass the British forces a little bit. Maybe eliminate that boat in the North Sea here, and break the supply line that the British have. I just drew Bravado. Instead of playing a card from your hand, discard 3 cards from your hand and play a land battle from your discard pile. Not the greatest for Italy. I don't like discarding cards with Italy. I'm going over to oh, got to score. 2. Well, Italy is going to get 1 point here. So they're going to actually get 3 points. Now when it comes to Germany's turn, they're only going to get 1 point for that too. So it's the same amount of points, but I just get 1 now for Italy. They share it right now. If I get a third army in there, then it will give me an extra point. But Japan being halfway across the world is not going to get there. Probably. That would be really unlikely. Alright, so here we go. United States. Here we go. We want... United Kingdom. Immediately build an army or a navy. But I think what I want is Pearl Harbor. Fleet deployed to Pearl Harbor. Build a navy in the East Pacific, the North Pacific, and build an army in Hawaii. I think I want that. That's going to start putting some pressure on Japan. So, army and 2 navies. Look at that. That's beautiful. Now, when you're in the water, a fleet needs to be next to a land military unit to be in supply. So right now this boat is connected here and this boat is connected here. But if I wanted to, for example, go out here to the Central Pacific with another boat, I have to be connected to a land unit that's in supply here. So this land unit will support my operation out here. All right. So the United States scores 4 points because they got 2 stars. Alright, this is going pretty well for the Allied powers. Advancing the round to round 3. I think I might play one more round. I've made this game as boring as possible because I haven't really built anything out, so... Alright, let's play this. Recruit an Italian army in the Balkans and eliminate an Allied army in the Ukraine. We'll do that. So we'll get an Italian army in the Balkans and we'll eliminate an army in the Ukraine. We got a land battle. Probably would have been better to have built out my German tanks, but... let's see here. We are definitely going to put a unit in India. Right now, that's a no-brainer, I think. Now I've got... Axis just got 1, 2, 3, 4 points. UK just got 2 points. Going over to... let's see. This card allows me to put my build army right on top, which I didn't do. I failed to do that. So I'm not taking it back, but that was the whole point of putting that card out. I'm going to do another build army, so I'm going to put this on top of my deck using this conscripts, and build an army back out to the Ukraine. I'll draw my build army card back up. And so we're there. We got 4 points. That Balkans card didn't really do much. Go to Italy. Alright. I think my plan for Italy was doing a sea battle, try to break the British line of supply there. So we'll do a sea battle. And we're going to attack this unit here in the ocean. Now this is fine, but at the end of the British turn, if this is out of supply, they're going to lose that unit. We'll draw back up a card. The United Kingdom must discard the top card of its draw deck. Italy gains 1 victory point. Well, not really the type of card I'm looking for right now. Italy scores 2. This is not going really well for the Axis. The United States. They just get stronger as the game goes on. Do we have a sea battle? We do. We can eliminate. We're going to do... Well, no. Did I skip Japan? I skipped Japan totally. Okay, because I know I skipped Japan. I had to have skipped Japan. Because we were going to build an army in China and score 4 points. And then that wouldn't have changed what the Soviets did, so, and it wouldn't have changed what the Italians have done. And so now we're going to go over here and we're going to play a sea battle and eliminate that navy in the Sea of Japan. And so now we're on turn 4. Well, you can start seeing how the game is starting to unfold here. Whoa! Japan has got a little bit of a foothold over here in China, and with their response card, they should be able to hold that for a little while. Unfortunately for the Axis powers, the British Army, the British now have an area in India which is going to cause the Japanese probably some problems over there. If they could have gotten China and had some time to move out and maybe get over to India, that would have been really great. That would have been excellent for them. The Soviet army is really set up with a lot of build armies. It's going to be very hard now to drive the Soviet war machine back at this point with this pretty awesome card. They're just going to be able to perpetually build armies after army, and the Axis powers just can't hold up to that. Germans might be able to do something about it if they can get out Bias for Action and have Bias for Action and Blitzkrieg out there both, and start doing some land battles. They might be able to help out there. And yeah, I mean the Allies look like they're in pretty good shape early on. Anyways, that's basically how you play. So, alright, talk about the game. I really like how these decks give you a feel for the country that you're playing. Every deck is different. Some cards are the same, like the battle cards, like land battles the same in every deck, sea battles the same in every deck. The build army or build navy cards are the same. But I think after that, every other card is unique. Every deck has unique events that correspond to some historical piece that country was able to do in the war. They have different status cards, like the Germans have the Atlantic Wall, which gives them, every time an Axis army is battled in Western Europe, the country initiating a battle must discard the top 3 cards of its deck. So they have a bunch of status cards that are related to that. There's these economic warfare cards that are unique to each country as well. They do just different types of damage to the different players' decks. So I like how each country has its own feel, and it has its own sort of. If you get to know the deck, you sort of know some of the things that you're going to be wanting to go for during the game, and how you should sort of a general path to how you should play. I mean, it isn't scripted out by any means, and how it plays sort of does depend on how the cards come out. Like, for example, with this British deck, that card that came out that allowed me to get an army, allowed me to get a, it's in my discard now. I'm looking for my draw deck for it. Recruit a United Kingdom army in India. Like, that's sort of a game changer, because that can change sort of the front of the war. That card could have been at the bottom of the deck, and what that would have meant was I wouldn't have had early access to India. I would have had to have built out to India to get it, but this gives me early access to it. So some games England might be fighting a lot in the European theater, but in other games they might be fighting a lot in the Pacific theater. It just depends on how the cards come out. So every game can really be different depending upon the cards. But that also means that sometimes you can get a draw at the beginning of the game, or just getting bad draws during the game that are just awful, and you could be in a position where there just isn't much you can do. Like, I was playing Germany once, and I did not draft a build army card. I went through half the deck before I got a build army card. That's really, 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 really unlikely to happen. And I had a status card that allowed me, if I could have just gotten one build army card, I had a status card that I could have played that would have allowed me to discard cards to get that build army card back. That would have saved me. But I really kind of got hosed for a good part of the game. You know, despite that, the game wasn't close. That game wasn't close. But that was tough. I think during the game, because of the way the cards are, there's going to be a couple of countries that are going to start out probably a little slow, or not have in hand the type of cards that they want, and I think that's part of the game. I mean, it makes the game interesting each time you play it, because you don't really know how it's going to go and how your allies are going to be doing. So I don't look at that as a negative. I kind of look at that as, okay, I've got a bad hand. I'm going to have to make the best I can do until I start getting those cards, and those cards might come out later in the game where I'm going to get a lot stronger later in the game, but I'm just going to have to depend on my allies to hold the line for a while until I start getting what I need, and I think that just kind of gives gives the game sort of a, I mean, I wouldn't call this a realistic war game, but it kind of gives it that sort of feel, how this kind of scenario would actually play out. I mean, in a war with countries trying to coordinate with each other, some countries are going to be a little slower off the starting blocks than other countries. There's going to be other countries where you're ready to do something, but the other country isn't ready to do it. So you've got to kind of, figure that out. So, I think that's how things really work in that sense. So I don't look at that as a negative. And the game itself is fairly short. I think every time we've played this with newer players, it's always come up that, okay, let's play again. That's a really good sign for a game, when people are like, okay, I get it now, and the game was short enough, let's play it again. And I think that's a really good sign for the game. I mean, the game is fun. That's the bottom line, I think, with this. It's fun. Even though there's very luck dependent upon what you draw out, you also have to understand that each country, each one of the allied countries and each one of the Axis countries is a cog in the wheel, and that not all those cogs are going to be going at the same rate, the same speed, and that some are going to be off to a harder start, some are going to be in more advantageous start. And hey, it could happen that an entire team is in a great start and an entire other team is in a really bad spot. That can happen. I think the odds are that that's going to happen is not very high. I think generally speaking, you're probably going to get at least one power on each side is going to have probably a less than ideal start, but it's just one of those things. But because the game's fun, because the game's short, I don't really see that as a big problem. I think that's going to be, if you're going to look at a criticism that's going to come up a lot in this game, it's going to be that. Some people are going to get frustrated and just dismiss the game because, oh, I got a really bad draw, I got kind of hosed, I couldn't do anything for half the game. Another thing can happen, like with what I have going on here with the Soviet Union, I have this Women Conscripts card, and I'm just going to be able to throw armies back and forth. So what can kind of happen in the game is, okay, the Axis eliminate my army, I build it back up, they eliminate it, I build it back up, and that may go back and forth for a while until somebody runs out of steam. So you kind of get some of these situations because you can only do a little bit on your turns, like, hey, I can put a boat out, or hey, I can fight one unit, unless you have some cards that allow you to do more. And there are definitely a lot of cards in there that allow you to do more than that, but it takes a while to kind of build up. And there are some spots on the board that just seem to be back and forth a lot. So, I like how the turns are quick. You play a card and you're done. But at the same time, sometimes it feels like, this kind of a little tit for tat going on, because you can only do, like, I can place my tank out, you eliminate it next turn, then I place my tank out again, you eliminate it, type of thing. That can happen a little bit. So, but I just like how the game unfolds on the board, and how it's different each time you play, and the order that the cards come out, it's never going to be the same. And the plans, because of the way the cards draw out, your plan is, the best thing you can do is kind of go with what you have in your hand, and that plan of action, it might be that the Axis powers are in a really good position to go after the United Kingdom or go towards Moscow, but it also might happen that in some games they're going to do a lot here in Africa and the Middle East and then go out towards India. If they can get out to India, that's great. So, sometimes Japan's going to be doing a lot on the mainland, sometimes they're going to be heading out to the islands and heading down to Australia, or even perhaps heading towards the United States if they really got themselves in a good position. So, you just never know how it's going to unfold, and what you get in your hand is what you have to work with. It's not fixed, but I think when you look at your hand, you kind of get a sort of a guideline as to what you probably should do. When I drew this hand for the Japanese, I had a lot of cards. It looked like, because I had the build army and build navy cards, I could get myself onto mainland China early, and I had that card that allowed me, this response card allowed me to protect my unit in China, which is great, because, like I said before, you have to understand the other decks, and I know that there are cards in some of these other decks that eliminate units on China. So, knowing that I had some level of protection there was a nice boost. It made me feel more confident that I could get myself onto the mainland there without much of a problem. So, the game's fun. One last thing I wanted to talk about Quartermaster General was the number of players, because Quartermaster General can play 6 players, which is kind of a rarity in games, and not take all night to play. So I think that's really neat. But the game can also play 2, because a lot of times I end up playing this 2-player. And a lot of games that play 2-player are not really designed for 2-player. Like, you have to control more than one faction. In this one here, you have to control 3 factions if you play it 2-player. And that's usually a pretty big turnoff for me. as far as games go and number of players. I don't like playing a game where you have to control several factions, but I actually don't mind it in this game because the way you kind of go down your turns, it's like one turn play a card, then you play a card on the next deck, and then you play a card on the next faction. And the difference with the two-player game is you know what's in the decks of the other players as you're playing all of the allies or all of the Axis powers. So the game plays differently because you can actually coordinate how you're going to play and what directions you're going to go. Because in a six-player game, you're not allowed to tell anybody what you have in your hand. You can have some general discussions, but you can't tell anybody what card you're going to be able to play and things like that in the game. So you're kind of in the dark as to what the other players are going to do exactly. And in a two-player game, you know exactly what you're going to do because you have access to all the cards, so it plays differently. Obviously, I like this with more players, but it's not that bad with two. So, and then finally, I kind of want to put some light on these three games here because right now these are my favorite war games that I'm playing. And Quartermaster General almost has no business being next to these other two games, but I've just had so much fun with it, I gotta put it here. This one here, if you don't like luck in your games, this one right here is just an awesome strategy game in general. It's a masterpiece of design. It is fantastic. It's a pretty long game, but it plays out the Battle of Gettysburg. It just has the feel of a real Civil War battle with the blocks and stuff on this game. It's by Rachel Simmons and the designer, and it is just a masterpiece. But you want to go from luck to absolute no luck. There's the Guns of Gettysburg. They almost don't belong in the same room together. And I also like Sekigahara, which is probably more of a in between these two games, but this game has a little bit of a bluffing element, and it's got some cards that you draw, but it's, as far as luck goes, it's a lot less lucky than what you might draw in Quartermaster General, but there's some factors of luck in that game. But this is just an awesome block game, and I want to do maybe a review of this one too. It's been very well received. So yeah, I know it's almost absurd to put Quartermaster General next to these three games, but I've had as much fun with that as these two other great games too. So it's in very good company here. Shaghilian says, this game is a brilliant design achievement. To model World War II as well as it does at this level of abstraction, the combatants begin with a single piece each, and with such incredibly short and simple rules is quite extraordinary. By far the shortest World War II grand strategy game ever devised, I think, and, of course, it delivers an entirely different experience to the far more complex games available on the subject, but still manages to convey an excellent narrative of the conflict. And one of the things I picked this post is because I think the game really does deliver an interesting narrative of World War II. I mean, it really does tell the story in how the game unfolds. And if you're not super worried about being on the winning or losing side, you just want to have some fun playing out how the full war played out in the different theaters, the game really does produce a really interesting result. It really does create a story of how the war could have, or even maybe follow in some parts how it really did unfold. there are so many possibilities of how these 6 decks really kind of interact with each other as they play out on the board, produces a different story every time. And yes, there are probably more complex games out there that maybe follow World War II more to a T, but I don't know if they necessarily tell the story any better than this game does. A 4 Andy says, I would have played this game sooner, but for the title. And I kind of agree. I mean, the title is kind of dry. And I think Tom Vassel's review of this game when it first came out was a little bit lukewarm. So I stayed away from it probably for the very same reasons. In fact, I remember walking by the stand that was set up for this game at TotalCon, and I really regret kicking myself in the butt because I probably could have met the designer of the game. But I walked right on by because it wasn't a game that interested me that much, and I regret it. But he goes on to say here, the game pretty much satisfies the desire for the rules to be on the cards. It can be as tense as it is fast and very easy for anyone to play. So it's tense and fast. Definitely agree with that. It's a very high repeat play value and far lower feeling of repetitiveness than one might expect. 216 cards and 20 turns or less gives an idea of just how many ways it can play out. And, you know, when you kind of look at the game and the board and how few pieces there are out, sometimes, and it does look like something that could get old fast, but every game that I've played of this has unfolded in a completely different way. It's just so interesting that these 6 decks, which are all different, have different compositions and the variability of what comes out on those cards creates a completely different game every time you play. You just don't know what to expect at all, which is one of the, I think, one of the great accomplishments of this game so far. Okay, Bradley LS says, after one play, I was very surprised with all of the tight decision-making this game offers to players. You want to do all the great things the cards offer you the chance to do, but you can only do one of them in a turn. And you can't neglect the basics like building armies and navies or simply fighting battles. I think that is one of the things that makes this game interesting in decision-making department, is because you have all of these cards and they do all these variety of things, but you can only play one, and you really want to play a lot of them at once. You have to pick one at a time, and it makes a huge implications as to the order in which you play them out. It's all about playing how to play key cards in the most efficient manner possible before your opponents throw you off your stride. Will you help an ally? Do you have the savvy to take advantage of any help do they have the savvy to take advantage of any help you give them? Will you lay the groundwork for big returns in future turns, or drive the enemy away from you now before some hurt is delivered to your doorstep? And those are exactly, I think that paragraph really captures what can go on in your mind as you're trying to decide which card to play. Because you might have cards that help somebody who looks like they could use some help, but there might be an enemy unit near you and you might need to get rid of them as soon as possible now. Or you might have a grander scheme where you have some other cards, some status cards that you want to put out and build a framework for bigger returns later. And all that kind of goes in your mind as you're trying to make your decision. It's also about point scoring economics. Can you outpace the combined economics of your opponents before the game ends? So there's also that element of if you don't hold the point scoring areas, even though you might be able to get some big turns later in the game, you might fall behind, so you have to keep pace. All the fun Axis and Allies ever delivered, and perhaps more in the strategy and decision department, minus the dice rolling, money changing, and force building, unless that was where the fun was for you. and in just a sliver of the time. And I was a big fan of Axis and Allies when it came out. I remember when I was in, I don't know if I was in high school or middle school, but my friend and I got that. And we used to play these huge games of it on Friday night and had a blast playing that game. Great game, but it was, so cumbersome and long. And you can get every bit of the experience of that game in a faster time with a lot of players and watch World War II unfold in just a better package, I think, with this game. Lobotnik says 60-minute 6-player war game? Yes, please. Although it is not the sort of war game you might be expecting. Probably one of the best team games I've ever played, with each army having a distinct feel to it. It's a great simulation of World War II with an emphasis on supply lines. Easy to teach, each turn is very quick, so downtime is minimal. Each round of 20 takes about 3 minutes, if that. A game I look forward to playing again. And, yes, I especially agree with this, especially with your reference to the team. As far as team games go, I don't really have many team games. I have 1775. But as a team game, I think I like this one better. I don't have very many team games, but this one definitely is a fun team game. All right, Waylander1 says, a fairly tense, light war game, but I think that card luck plays too big a role. I'd like to see some option to minimize the luck of the early draw. I'd play it again, but I'm not sure about the luck factor. And as I suspected, I think, looking through a lot of these other posts, the main complaint is the luck factor. And I know it, especially at the beginning of the game, sometimes you get a draw where you might not get like a build army or something like that. And you might have to wait a while to get a card like that out. And some people have offered variations where, hey, each player starts out with a build army, and you could certainly play that way. But my friend and I had a discussion about that, and neither one of us feel like we would want to play that way, because you're drawing 10 cards to start the game, you're discarding 3. And one of the things about the game, I think, is that, sure, you may start out a little slow, but if you start out slow, that just means that you're going to build up a little steam later on in the game. So, the game, I think, kind of works out, where some players are starting out faster and some players are starting out slower. And, sometimes it might be to your advantage to suddenly come on strong later on in the game and suddenly get rolling. Though if you are the Axis team, you definitely want to make some gains early on, because you're not going to last and be ahead at the end if it's a real long haul of a game, I think. Yeah, the other thing I just want to say about the luck is that's kind of true, but it's also, the game is a lot about the hand management and making do with what you have. And so, and you also have to kind of buy a little bit into the narrative and know that if you start out slow, you're going to have something for you later on. But you still have to manage the cards that you have. So I think even now, you might not be able to have the greatest of great moves at the beginning of the game. There's still something for you to do.